Hello, welcome to this Inspiring Money Stories session. So, I have a very special guest on our podcast tonight, and I'm really, really excited to be hosting Tammie Bennett, who is a mindset coach. And I understand she's also a runner and a coach as well. So, I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about her background. When Tammie and I were chatting originally, and I was asking in a couple of different communities that I'm in, who's got an inspiring money story, who would like to come on the podcast, Tammie put her hand up. And then as we were chatting, she was like, I don't know if my story is really going to be suitable for your podcast actually, because I'm kind of like, came through using all the, big manifestation techniques and everything that, you get taught, and found that nothing worked. And actually it was a really simple thing that ended up working. And I'm like, no, that's perfect, because it's all about the inner work and the inner world. And that's really what I teach as well. And I think what you're talking about tonight is absolutely perfect to dovetail into day 3 of the 5K way. That is the 5-day masterclass. If you're participating in that, if you're following that along, we're talking about money story tomorrow. And I think what Tammie's talking about tonight is the perfect complement to day 3 of the 5K way. So I love how the universe is kind of coordinated that you happen to be on in the middle of this week. And it's the day before money stories, which is fantastic. Anyway, enough of me and this intro. Tammie, for those people who may not know who you are and what you do, can you just tell us a little bit about your work?
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk about this. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. But I am a serial entrepreneur. I've had many of my own businesses. And so one of them was I taught fitness classes to pregnant mothers that had just given birth, and they could bring their kids with them. I was a running coach. My husband and I used to have running camps for high schoolers and middle schoolers. And then I was a running coach for 14 years in there. And then I also am an artist. So I had my own art licensing business. And then I had my own stationery business. And during the pandemic, I decided to kind of take off on my mindset coaching, because so much of what I did with my runners is actually just mindset, not actually like telling them how many miles to run, but so much about what was going on in their head.
Mhm.
And so during the pandemic, I just felt like I wanted to be more in contact with people and help people more than just sending out packages to all the shops across the United States. And so then I just really dug into mindset coaching. And I feel like I have finally found my home, and
Mhm.
all the roads, all the things that I've done so far have led me to here. But part of my story is that in every one of those businesses until now, I carried debt for my business. I had debt the whole time, and that I made that be a big problem. So we can talk more
Mhm.
about that as we go along.
Interesting. Yeah, because I know that, debt has got so many negative connotations for so many people, and it's such a common problem as well, So yeah, I think that would be really, really interesting. So I love that you've gone through all these different businesses, you've tried so many different things, and you've now landed on mindset coaching. So do you tend to coach anyone in particular, or are you just generally like you coach anyone on their mindset?
Yeah, I'm a general life coach. And I just help people. I call myself like the goal getter coach or the show up coach. So my
Mm.
podcast is the Show Up Society, because I just help people show up as themselves and show up for themselves to get their goals. But because I was in these arena of sports and arts, I attract a lot of clients that are runners or in sports or have their own creative or art businesses, because I just know so many people there, and that's the world that I kind of lived in.
Mhm.
So a lot of my clients are creatives or sports people, but not everybody.
Okay. Interesting. So tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, me asking some of these questions, but tell us a little bit about the debt that you got into through your businesses. Like, how did you, how did you get that debt? How much did you end up getting into debt, and what was going on?
Yeah. So it was a beautiful credit card, and it and so when I had my art and my stationery businesses, I bought all my supplies, because at the time I didn't have a business, and I wanted to show at, trade shows, and I wanted to get my products out into stores, but in order to make the products, I needed the supplies. So I put all of my supplies on this credit card, and I bought a lot of classes, a lot of courses. It's funny enough that I spent so much money on my credit card, spending money on how to have a better money mindset courses and books and meditations and all of that.
On your credit card.
on my
Yeah.
credit card. Right, right. So it ended
Yep.
up being $18,000 that I had on my credit card in debt.
Mhm.
And I just paid off the last payment last month, and now I have 0 debt.
Congratulations. Amazing. Wow. So how did it feel for you when you got to the point of like, wow, it's 18K now? What was that like for you?
It was terrible because I think we get so much messaging that debt is bad and that you're a bad person if you have debt and
Mhm.
that you're irresponsible. And I think I do think that women suffer from it more, for some reason. I think there's so many men in business and men-owned companies and corporations that they go into debt as part of business. That's just what they do.
Mm,
They borrow money and then they set up their businesses or whatever's next, and then they make it back, and they don't see it as a problem or, something, like, irresponsible, and I think so many of us women do.
mhm.
And so that was a story that I told for a long time, and it turned into me the story of I'm bad with money. I always have debt. I've never been out of debt. I'm terrible with money. I'm irresponsible with money. All of those things became my story about what I told about myself.
Interesting. I completely agree with that perspective. I tend to notice that as well. I wonder if there's any research out there on that. It just seems that it's so common with women that we beat ourselves up. I did exactly the same as well. And I'm sure I've spoken about it before on this podcast when I was in my, the amount of debt that I had before, which I think came close to around about the same in pounds, actually, like 18, 19K, maybe it was around 20. I can't remember exactly now. But I made myself really wrong for it.
Mhm.
And I was actually spending a lot of the money on education at the
Right.
time. And then I didn't have a lot left over. So then, sometimes I'd have to buy food on my credit card or sometimes I'd buy clothes. And yes, there were definitely like overspending and consumer, spending habits that weren't that great. But actually, a lot of it was investing in my future as well. And it took a money coach to, like an accountability type coach, not mindset coach, to literally sit me down with a spreadsheet and go, most of this is education debt. And
Mhm.
I felt so much better just with that perspective shift. It wasn't about the debt, it was about how I was thinking about it.
Exactly.
Really interesting. Yeah, yeah.
And that's
So
actually what happened to me, like, how I was able to start chipping away at it is I just a couple things. 1, I forgave it. And 2, I
mhm,
actually said thank you to it, and that may sound irresponsible to some finance coaches, but to me, it really helped, and I just said, "Thank you so much, debt, for letting me take these classes and buy these supplies and start my business." Because if I hadn't started it then, if I had waited till I was ready and everything was perfect, it could have been 10 years. I wouldn't be here right now. And so I
yeah.
just really had this moment where I just said, "Thank you for letting me borrow this money ahead of time to invest in myself, and I believe in myself that I can go create a business."
Mm,
And I also forgave myself for, like, beating myself up for all those years for carrying the debt, and I just said, "It's okay. It's
yeah.
okay. That's the method that we found to have money to build our business, and
Mhm,
that's what we did, and it's done now." And I
mhm.
just had this beautiful moment of just forgiveness and gratitude, and then moved on from there.
Interesting, yeah. What was it, do you think, that brought you to that place, the realization that forgiveness was so important in this situation?
I feel like maybe I had tried everything else, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, "What's left?" "Oh, gratitude and forgiveness." But, yeah, that was part of it, and also there was just this moment where I just decided, "You know what? I am so tired of carrying this heavy weight on my back of telling myself that I don't have a good money story, that I'm bad with money, I'm irresponsible, I have this debt."
Mm,
And so in that same conversation with the forgiveness and the gratitude, I had a moment where I just said, "You know what? I am never again going to repeat this story that I'm bad with money."
oh,
It was
nice.
just a decision, just a moment's decision. I am never again going to say I am bad with money, because all that was doing was perpetuating this belief that I had that I was bad with money. And I feel like you can't get out of that cycle until you change the language, you change the story.
Completely, completely, yeah. Because I mean, if you just carry that belief, "I'm bad with money," and all you end up doing is seeing all the ways that you're bad with money, and you're collecting more and more and more evidence feeling
Yes.
terrible about yourself. And if I don't know if you had this, but I used to have an overspending habit. So I would spend money sometimes to feel better as well. As like in the coaching world, we call that buffering in a way,
Mhm.
like, that temporary pleasure you're looking for. So if I was
Yes.
feeling bad about myself, buy myself a new top to wear. Oh, I feel great for one day,
Right,
or
right.
that kind of thing. And and then it perpetuates itself, as you say. It's like you just prove you're bad with money. Just tell a new story and it all starts to change. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it was so powerful. And in a moment, just a moment of a conversation.
Wow. Yeah, that is amazing. Wow. It's really interesting as well that you talk about forgiveness, because I've seen this in a lot of the really old spiritual books about, teaching about the energetics of money. And they talk a lot about forgiveness and how important it is when it comes to debt in particular. And, if you hold a grudge against, someone in particular, especially if it comes to like a financial thing that might have happened to you before, and you're holding a grudge against someone for ripping you off or never teaching you good, money habits or whatever it might be. And then you might hold all of that, unforgiveness towards yourself. That can also be an energetic kind of vibration where you're literally perpetuating that cycle again and again of more and more debt that you're collecting. So I'm curious to know, you've talked about the unforgiveness for yourself. Did you have any of that as well in your money story around, previous experiences from your life where you might have held unforgiveness towards other people?
Yeah, and, like, right when you were bringing that up, I was remembering I wrote out this letter of all the things that I wanted to forgive myself for and other people for in regards to money, and
Mhm.
I think I had, like, 83 things on the list. So,
Wow.
some things were like,
Yeah.
I had borrowed money from a friend in college and just, like, never paid it back and just kept forgetting, and then, we moved away and I just never did it, and it's always just still, like, in the back of my mind, like, "Oh, shit, like,
Mm.
I never paid her back. I feel so bad about it." And
Mhm.
then some things were comments that other people made to me, about money that really hurt. And so I had all of these kind of like wounds that I inflicted myself or the other people inflicted, and I just wrote them all out and and
So
and did it forgiveness that way, just kind of one by one. And some took longer than others, right? Like some I wasn't ready to just like forgive.
yeah.
But just the act of writing them out, like all the things I could think of,
Mm.
the act of that just sort of like cleansed my
Yeah.
soul a little bit, and, it just felt really good. But
Mm,
I had forgotten that until you brought that up, so I'm so happy that you mentioned that.
so interesting. And what about, you mentioned that there were some things on there that were harder to forgive. So how did you come to a place of letting that go with the ones that hung around a little bit more and stung a little bit more?
Yeah, I think, some of those were when I was younger. So, things that happen to us when we're younger, I think sometimes like embed themselves a little bit easier.
Mm,
And so I think I just really worked on practicing letting go, but also having compassion for the people that did it. So, like my
mhm.
parents, of course, there were a couple parent wounds from there, but I
Yeah.
really worked on just trying to put myself in their shoes and how scary it must have been to be really young parents and to not have any money and to be in
Mhm.
scarcity and not knowing exactly where we're going to get. I mean, we weren't like to the point of not having food, but like not knowing how we're going to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And if I put myself in their position, then it makes it a lot easier to understand and a lot easier to forgive some of the things that they have said. So
Yeah.
yeah, just a mix of practicing it over and over, like, okay, can we let this go, can we let this go, mixed with compassion for
Mhm.
the people that did those things or said those things.
Brilliant. Yeah. And it sounds like you also gave yourself the space and the time to process that if it doesn't come straight away. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a big journaler, so, you can find me in my journal every night, just to get out all the mud from my head and just kinda restart, and so, yeah, I spent some definite time just
Mm.
thinking it over and writing it out.
Nice, nice. And did you use any specific practices? Because I know that some people use tapping or they use Ho'oponopono for this kind of forgiveness work. Was there anything like that that you used?
No,
Mm,
I have tried a couple, but I think I haven't really fully given in to a lot of the practices that work so well for people.
mm.
I work really well with pen and paper and just
Yeah,
writing things out. It's just how I work. Maybe part of that's like the artist in me and just seeing it visually just helps. But
yeah.
yeah, for me it was journaling, but I know that those work really well for other people.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think that just, highlights the fact that, everything works. It's just find what works for you,
Yeah,
So yeah, yeah,
that's
that's a
so
great
true.
example of that. One of the things that I have conversations with about people quite a lot when you're coaching is, the forgiveness piece, and where there might be things that feel like they're unforgivable, whether it's something that you've done against someone else, or whether someone has inflicted some pain on you. And what would you say to someone who is in a place where it's like, you know what, I can never forgive that. That was just wrong. They might have a lot of people that would agree with them as well if something, really terrible happened to them. So what would you say if anyone's in that position?
Yeah, and that's interesting too because I have some of those also. I came from a
Mm,
very abusive, traumatic childhood, and there are a couple things that just like I'm not going to forgive, but I have decided to just close the chapter basically and just that happened to me,
mhm,
and how do I want to live my life from this moment forward? Do I
mm,
want to live it in fear or keeping small, or do I want to live it to the best of my ability? And I've just chosen to just look from this day forward, but acknowledge those terrible things happen and they felt terrible and
mm.
horrible. And I want to have a really good day today. So I'm going to focus on what I can to make this a great day. And so,
Wow.
and that may sound, I don't know, a little too simplistic, but for me, it has really worked to just choose
Mm.
what I'm going to focus on. And I'm going to choose on controlling what I can control every day.
I'm hearing some really clear decision making from you, actually.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it sounds like that is something that is, really beneficial for you. Yeah, I saw, I can't remember where I read this. It might have been somewhere on Instagram. It was like the kind of origin of the word decision, and how it
Mm,
comes from incision, I think. And when you think about incision, it's cutting. And so when you're making a decision, you're literally cutting away from the options and deciding on the one path, and how powerful that is, whether it's, in your goals and your strategy, or it's manifestation. It's like I'm putting all of my energy there, and that's my laser focus, and how powerful that is. And I'm just hearing that in your examples of how, you were like, I am never going to say this to myself again.
mhm.
I am closing the door on that unforgiveness. That doesn't serve me, and I'm moving forward in this way. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I have 2 things to say about that. One is like, I didn't know the origin of the word, but that makes total sense about,
Yeah.
incision, and it's funny too because I have cut out a family member that was incredibly abusive, toxic, dangerous, violent, and
Mm.
that communication is done now, and I
Yeah.
feel great about it, and, some
Yeah.
people are like, "What? You don't talk to your dad anymore?" I'm like, "No, I do
Yeah.
not, and I have a really good life because of it." So,
Mm.
the incision thing is really that makes a lot of sense to me.
Definitely.
And then the thing about decisions is I used to think of myself as very indecisive. I was scared to make decisions. I was scared of doing the wrong thing. I was scared of making a decision and then it being the wrong one.
Mm.
And what helped me is to just start making a choice. And if it's the wrong choice, meaning like if it didn't get me the result that I wanted, then I didn't beat myself up about it. I was just like, "Okay, at least we tried." It's almost like a process of elimination. So we're
Yeah.
like, "Okay, well, we know that doesn't work for you. Let's try something else." And
Mhm.
so it took away all the fear of having to having the decision to be like the right one
Yeah.
or right? It just took away all the pressure and it's like, "We're just gonna try this thing. It may work, it may
Mhm.
not, but we're just gonna do something and
Mhm.
see if it works." And so in doing that over and over and over, I became really decisive because now I'm like, I have my own back. And if this doesn't
Mm.
give me the result I want, it's okay. We're going to try something else. So now I don't have any fear of making decisions at all. I'm very quick to make decisions now because I built that comfort for myself and to do so.
Definitely. And I think taking away that belief as well, that there is such a thing as a right decision, that's a
Right.
label, right? Like it's just a thing. It is what it is. You can label it as right, you could label it as wrong, So
Yeah, you're
just
exactly right.
figure it out when, you see the result of what that decision was.
Yeah.
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 So interesting. So you got yourself into a place with 18K on your credit card. You also use your credit card to invest in, different money mindset kind of courses, books, all those types of things that I'm sure many of us here have done. Um, and then you started to have that real insight into this is my money story. I'm telling myself I'm bad with money. I got to stop doing that. And you started practicing the forgiveness around that as well. And that started to change things for you. So I'm curious to know, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, how long did
Sure.
it take to pay off your credit card? How long did it take to get out of that debt?
Uh, let me just try to remember. 20, a little under 3 years.
Amazing.
a
Yeah.
little between 2.5 and 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did it by really focusing on I a lot of times I also teach about tiny daily habits
Mm,
and building tiny daily habits into our lives, but instead of taking things away, like I'm gonna stop doing that, I like to add things into our lives that feel really good. And so
yeah.
I sort of did that with money. I focused on how can I bring money in a way
Oh,
that feels fun and
nice.
delicious, right? And so for me, the way that I bring money in is by focusing on helping people.
Mhm.
So I've tried to have money goals where I wanted to make X amount per month or X amount per year, and it doesn't zing me. It doesn't like drive me at all. It's just like
Mm,
meh. It doesn't mean anything to me. But when I
mm,
think about, oh, how can I help this other person that's suffering like I used to? And
mhm.
what would be a fun way to reach out to people and help them? The money comes rolling in. And so when I just
Interesting.
focus on bringing money in and how does that work look like for me? For me, that looks like providing lots of service and love and energy.
Mhm.
Um, then that's what worked. And so instead of like really like penny pinching every single thing that I spent on, I didn't focus on that as much. I did think about it more. I'll get
Mhm.
to that in a second. I wanna add on to something if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm,
But I focus mostly on how can I bring more money in just because that felt a lot funner,
mm.
uh, and more doable than worrying about every penny that went out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I hear this from people again and again and again. When it comes to debt, the focus on the abundance, bringing in more, because, of course, if you're paying attention and you're being mindful with your money and you're starting to steward your money in a different way and have a look at, getting a little bit better as well at like the management of money, because when you manage money really well at a smaller level, you can have a container of a much bigger pool of money in the future, right? And you
Mhm.
know how to manage it. And then, yeah, when you focus on that abundance rather than the lack, I mean, it comes back to kind of simplistic law of attraction as well, doesn't it? Like
Yeah,
you focus on the abundance, you get the abundance. You focus on the debt, you get more debt, So
right,
that's
right.
really, really interesting. And I love how you shifted that focus as well. How can I help other people? How can I add on? It kind of reminds me of that overflow state that you get into, because so many people I see as well, they just want to meet their bills. They just want to get to the point where it's like, I'd have no more money stress. And it's like, but what if it felt even better than that? You had overflow for savings, you had overflow for
Mhm.
your child's education, or whatever it is that you want to provide. And so that kind of reminds me of the way you've shifted your perspective around goals, and maybe even on top of that. So for those of you doing the 5K way this week, we spoke about that in day one, your vision. Do you want to add a line item onto there of like, how do you want to give and provide for other people as well? If you manifested an extra chunk of money. I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then can I say one thing about, like, the money going out?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so what was really interesting to me is so I said I focus mostly on money coming in, but I did pay a little bit more attention to money going out. And the question that I started asking myself was, how do I like if I was tempted to spend money on something? Because I used to spend so much money on classes and courses and workbooks and, all of the things of like learning and consuming information.
Mm,
So before I spent the money though, with this new kind of mindset, I would ask myself, how do I already have what I think I'm gonna get from this course? How do I
mm,
already have what I need here? Because what happened to me so many times with all of the money that I spent on these courses and stuff is I would get halfway through and I was like, I already know all of this.
mm,
Like
mm,
there's one or two little pieces of things that I could learn, but like the general gist of almost all those classes I was taking, I already knew. It was inside of me already. And
mm,
so when I just took the pause to because I was an overspender too, and that, I would spend
mm,
money on things if I was feeling kinda low, I would pause there and go, "But wait, 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 do you need this course? Because
mhm.
the thing that you think you're gonna get from it, how do you already have that right now?" And that helped me so much because so many times I was like, "Oh, actually, I don't need that course."
I love
And
that. That's
yeah.
such a good way to pause and just ask yourself that question. Definitely, definitely. And I think we've spoken about this on the podcast. I can't remember which guest it was, but we also spoke about like little things like, one of my habits that I still have, and how I've started to stop myself from just spending on Amazon because it's way too easy with like the
Mhm.
buy with one click thing. And it's like, oh,
Yes.
someone's recommended a book. Oops, I just bought that like with one click, you know.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
starting to put it into my Amazon basket, and I almost accidentally bought it all the other day. And I think it added up to over 1,000 because I've just, put stuff in the basket and I'm like, I won't forget this book recommendation. I won't forget this thing that someone said. But if I
Mhm.
really need it, I can go through and have a look and just take a breather and just see, do I really want that? So it sounds like it's a very similar thing to what you're saying. And I really like that question in particular for courses because I think sometimes they are spoken about and delivered, the marketing messages are delivered in such a juicy way that it makes you think, oh, I need this. It's going to solve
Right.
all of my problems, you know?
This is the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
the thing that will save me. Yeah. Is it really though? Yeah.
Right. Right.
Brilliant.
Well, it's funny that you say that about Amazon because there is a thing that you can click called add to my list, and it just adds it to your wish
Ah,
list
yes.
instead of the cart. So that's what I do. And
Nice.
then, but that really has helped me because I was the same way. Like the
Yeah.
moment somebody recommended a book, it was like on its way to me.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like one of those where it's like I'll put it there and then not look at my list for a week or two. And then if I go back and really still want it, I'll order it. But there's so many books on my wish list now that I haven't bought just because I'm like, I don't think I need it yet. It's not the right time yet. So just
No.
taking that pause, yeah, it's really helpful.
Yeah, really, really helpful as well. Fantastic. I love that. So you got yourself out of debt within 2, 3 years. That's a pretty amazing kind of, track record for 18K, and it was just with a mindset switch more than anything.
Right, right. And then, and then doing things from that, right? So I wasn't
Yeah.
just, sitting on the couch saying, I'm great with money. Money's rolling in.
Yeah.
Um, so it was actually doing the things from that belief of I can bring more money in. I can pay
Yes.
off this debt. This is going to be totally doable. And
Mm,
just really having that belief and then practicing that belief by going out and making offers to help people and to coach people. And,
yeah.
I was pitching myself everywhere. I was talking on seminars and workshops and summits and podcasts and reaching out to everybody I knew in
Mhm.
my different communities and different groups to offer free sessions and to just coach as many people as I could. And that just turned into a really big, nice client base. So I
Nice.
was, it was that mindset with the action from that belief of the mindset that I can pay this off and this is not a problem.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. So from the energy of that belief, it sounds like you were much more productive in going out and finding ways that you can earn more money, that you can make more money, that you can receive and attract more money. How was that different from when you were holding the kind of I'm bad with money vibe? Like in terms of your business and in terms of your money making capacity, how did that belief impact that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So back in the days when I was like fully on in debt and still kind of adding to the debt, every decision I made was like, oh, but how much money can I make from this? And it was like,
Mm,
I just like imagine my posture being just like wanting to like grip onto things, just this
mm,
like almost like in Lord of the Rings, like Smeagol that has the ring. It's like kind of like that,
yeah,
like just
yeah,
needing the money so bad. But
yeah.
like I said earlier, like I've discovered that that doesn't drive me. That doesn't make me excited to go do the work, to go do it for X amount of dollars. But if
Mm,
instead, so that's what it looked like before. Like if I do this, I can make $20, or if I, $2,000, whatever it is.
mhm.
Just thinking about the money.
Yeah,
As whereas now I'm like, okay, well, if I do this group program, I would love to help 30 people. And I just think about it in terms of people and connections and people
mhm.
getting helped. Um, and so it changes the motivation for me. And so, whereas it was how many dollars can I make from this? Now it's like how many people are going to be so happy that they worked with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, because it's such a different motivator, I think, isn't it? When, I don't know if you had a similar kind of mindset to me around debt, but when I thought about being in that financial situation and the way systems are set up, and I got offered a credit card, I think when I was 18, like
Oh
when I
yeah.
and it was in a shop. It was one of those really high interest rates. I had no idea about any of that stuff, and that's where those habits kind of built up. So I had a lot of anger at the system, and a
Mhm,
lot of
mhm.
anger around, these organizations have basically, kind of brought us in and manipulated us into this. But when I was in that mindset, The last thing I wanted to do really was go out there and attract and earn more to pay them back because I was holding such a grudge, and that's that
Mm,
unforgiveness showing up, right? So it didn't serve me to be thinking that way about that, or and it also didn't serve me to be thinking like how bad I was with money. So yeah, it sounds like a similar kind of thing. It really does have that impact. Whereas if you start thinking about actually, well, yeah, they'll get paid back, fine, but what about all the people and the connections? And one of the things actually that really served me just to add into that as well was when I had a mindset shift around those organizations as well
mm.
and thought about the individuals providing for their family because they're working there who may not even agree with those policies and those, kind of things that they're doing. And that really shifted as well. I was like, actually, technically, I'm providing for their families as well. And it's all going around in this consumer society. So that can be a really nice way to look at it as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 kids I have a junior and a freshman in college, and the second that they turned, 18 or, like, sign up for college, they got so many credit card, like, offers in the mail, it's nuts.
That is
So,
crazy.
we're
I
really
still
lucky
am
that
not doing that. That's
yeah.
terrible, isn't it? Yeah.
But we're
Yeah.
really lucky their high school had, a finance program that you have to take to graduate, financial
Amazing.
literacy, and so they talk about, like, don't sign up for the credit cards yet,
Yeah.
like, because most 18-year-olds, like, don't exactly know how to, not put a bunch of money on debt. I mean, I did it too.
Completely. I've got personal experience with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
That's so good that you found a school with financial literacy. Yeah, I hope that, whatever, school I find for my daughter when she's old enough will also have that. Otherwise, I'll teach her what I
right,
know.
you can do it yourself, right, you can
Yeah,
take it
exactly,
from me,
exactly.
I've been there, I know how to yeah, I know what not to do.
Absolutely. So just to kind of summarize then, for anyone who might resonate with any parts of your story, whether it's, being significantly in debt, feeling like, you're in a really bad place with money, feeling like you're actually really bad with money, what are the top things that you would say as pieces of advice that would help them to get out of that situation for themselves?
Yeah, I think one thing that like we haven't talked about it exactly this way yet is that every time I was saying I need to get better about my money mindset, it sounds like a positive thing, right? It sounds like, "Oh, that's so great. You want to get better." But hidden in there is the hidden signal that you're not good enough at it yet, that it needs
Yes.
fixing, that it's
Mhm.
broken right now. And so I think just be really careful about your language, about how you're talking about yourself and money. Because even if you're saying like, "Oh, I need to work on my money mindset," or "I gotta fix my money mindset," is still saying like, because it's not good enough right now. So just be
Yes.
careful about that, about how you're speaking, and just try to find language that makes it seem or feel like you're good at it right now. So even saying something like, "I used to be bad at money mindset, but it's getting better." Right?
Mhm.
And so just
Yeah.
finding ways that feel true, but also feel good and make you feel good about yourself and your money story. So I think that's the first one, just really watching your language and how you talk about yourself and
Mhm.
money.
Mhm.
Um, and then the second one, probably is to, if you have the debt, to find a way to move on from it, to like, if you like, for me, forgiveness and gratitude worked. That might not work for everybody, but, you know, I think it's
Mhm.
great. Sounds like you think it's great.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
just find a way to think about debt in a way that doesn't make you feel terrible. And then, I think finding the next steps to take would be my third piece of advice.
Mm.
So for me, it was focusing on money coming in and what feels good to me. Like, everybody's going to have their own way. Some people, if they're focusing on money coming in, they have money goals, make X amount by so and so. That works really well for them. So just
Mhm.
finding your way on what feels good to you to bring the money in.
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, that would be my third. Find the way to
Amazing.
move forward. Yeah.
Such great pieces of advice. And just to say on your first one, I'm really glad that you brought that up. Like that hidden belief that's in there, like it sounds so good. I need to get better. I need to get better. And you're just reinforcing, but I'm not good yet. I'm still
Right.
not good. And it kind of ties in on a manifestation point of view to the law of assumption, where it's like if we can powerfully step into a way where we can feel abundant, feel wealthy right now, even if it's just a tiny micro step from where you are, you may not be feeling like a millionaire today, but
Mhm.
just one more little tiny step on your journey, and you can really tune in and feel that I am supported, I am sufficient, I am taken care of, there's always enough to meet my needs. Anything like that. is so much more powerful than the whole, oh, I need to earn more. I need to get myself better at doing this. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
those hidden beliefs. It's like, but it's not here yet. It's the lack, the scarcity, the I'm not good with money is still there and present. So it's really important to be paying attention to your language. Yeah,
Can
yeah.
I add on something to what you just said?
Yeah,
Which
please do.
Yeah, this is a big part of how I coach, and I'm so glad that you brought it up to focus on where you do have the thing that you're wishing you had more of.
Yeah,
So, I said I work with a lot of creative business owners, and I'll have some that come to me and they'll say, "I'm not making money in my business," and I'm like, "Well, first, tell me where you are making money in your business. Where are you making sales? Are you selling on Etsy? Are you selling in stores?" And they always are selling places, even though they came to me saying, "I'm not making any money." And I'm like,
yes,
"But wait, that's not true. You are making money." So one of the first steps, I'm so glad you brought it up, is to pay attention to where you are having money come in, and
yes.
because if you're like kind of ignoring those or saying it's not enough, you're sort of telling the universe like, "Hey, yeah, that's great, but I'm not going to pay attention to, I'm not going to be grateful for it." And
Yeah,
I think you have to really pay attention and say, "Oh, I am making money from this place and this place and this place." Even if it's, sometimes I'll get a royalty check for like $1.40.
yeah,
Like, but
yeah.
I'm making $1.40 from something that I did. And so to just pay attention to where you do have the money coming in will then help you find more places for it to come in the future.
Ah, such a great addition. You're so right. And I think and it kind of ties into, it's a little bit embarrassing, but I've lost all my shame around this over the years. But even finding the equivalent of 1 cent for you, so I guess it's 1 penny here,
Mhm.
on the street, I have no shame. I am like going and picking that up, even if it's dirty. I'm going to put it in a tissue. I wash it when I get home, and I'm
Mhm.
like, thank you so much for bringing this money to me,
Right.
and yeah, it works. Even on the train, I've dived in when the train's busy and I've spotted maybe there's a dollar a pound on the floor, and I'm like, "Right, I'm gonna get that when those people
Mhm.
get off the train." And I get in there and I get it, and I'm like, "Woohoo!"
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like the universe is bringing you all of this abundance. Are you paying attention? Yeah.
Right. Yep. Yep. Because it's not
Love
about
it.
the penny, right? It's about the mindset of like, "Oh, money
Yeah,
is always coming to me. I'm always finding money."
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it might be a dollar or a cent today, but tomorrow it could be $10, and the next day it's 100 and then 1,000, and you just keep building from there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I love
So good.
it. This has been such a good conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've really appreciated our talk. And I'm sure lots of people in this community, I hear people struggling with debt. I hear people struggling with unforgiveness and, all of that kind of stuckness that comes with that. So I'm sure people are going to get so much value from all of the tips that you've shared today. So if anyone's curious about your work, if they're a creative person, if they need some life coaching, if they're into running and sports, where can they find out more about you?
So the best two places are Instagram, and I am at Show Up Society. I share a lot
Mhm.
there, a lot of vulnerable, real, authentic stories there. I love being on there and I love talking to people in my DMs. And then
Mhm.
also just my website, showupsociety.com. And that's where you can find out about how to work with me. I have a newsletter with a fun freebie that will help you get unstuck and help you choose your goals. But those are the two best places to find me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Keri. This is fun.
Great.